Good morning, and welcome to the FLI Girls podcast, where we are keeping it real, keeping it live, keeping it fly.
Good morning. Hello, whatever time of day you're listening. This is the FLI Girls podcast, and we're talking about goals. We're talking about relationships, definitely today, and we're talking about college life. And this is the Black woman's take on being fearless in the pursuit of a successful and full life. My name is Cassiana, and I go by Kes. And my favorite theme song, technically it's not from like a sitcom, but it's from a show I used to watch all the time. And it's the Braxton Family Values. I don't know why, but I used to love singing. I love singing.
The Braxton Family Values. How it go?
We are the Braxtons, and you'll see that we are not like an ordinary family. Tony, Tracy, Tawanda, Gina, Tamar, and we'll see you well. Teach you a thing or two of Braxton Family Values.
That sounded like the same note all the way through.
Off the end.
Nobody said I was good at singing. You just asked me what my theme song was.
You better know all the words, okay?
All of them.
All the words and no notes.
No one said that I could sing.
Oh, that was good. That was good. Well, my name is Thais, and I would say my favorite theme song is from way back in the day. Hope some of y'all know this. Maybe your mom or your dad listened to this show. Good times. Good times.
Anytime you need a friend.
Ain't we lucky we got them. Good times,
Yeah.
Come on with the runs.
Come on, you better jump in her theme song.
Okay. Honey, I was giving an ad lib.
I need the people to see these facial expressions though. Well, my name is Sydney, and my favorite theme song is a classic. I have to go with That's So Raven. And it goes, you can see into the future. I don't know the words, like it's a dream. Yeah.
Go, Ray.
I'm gonna just skip. That's so Raven. It's something that I can see. That's so Raven. It's serious to me. That's so. I'm gonna skip. Yep, that's me.
Okay. Like that, Sydney. All right, I'm Tiffany Lewis, and my favorite theme song, I'm actually gonna sing and y'all gotta guess it. So I'm gonna switch mine up, okay? I know my parents love me.
Different world.
Behind me come what may.
Different world.
I know that I am ready, yeah.
Different
For
world.
I finally heard them say it's a different world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
From where you coming from?
Yes, it is now. I love that. Go, Aretha. Aretha did that on that song.
Yes, she did.
Yes, she did.
I didn't know that, Aretha.
Yes,
I had no idea that was Rita.
Aretha.
They had all the divas on that show. All of them.
True.
Wasn't Patty Dwayne Wayne's mom?
Yes. Yeah.
Somebody
Wow.
else's mom?
Wow.
Let me go rewatch it.
I really thought I was going to HBCU, but that didn't happen. I did. I used to watch that song I was hyped.
You know, it's modeled after Hampton, or inspired by.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
One of our dorms looks like their dorm.
Oh, well, that's a great fun fact.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
We tell it to people on tours.
All right, so today, y'all, we actually have a special guest with us from our advisory council, Miss Sierra Bridges. Hey, Sierra.
What?
All right, Sierra, what's your favorite theme song?
So first, thank you so much for having me. I am Sierra Campbell Bridges and super excited to be here. I will say, first of all, I loved all y'all's theme songs. So I was like, oh, but I like, oh, but then, oh man, that was a good one. But I'm gonna have to go with Sister, Sister.
Hey.
That's all I can tell you about it though.
Well, that is sufficient. Thank you, Sierra, for joining us today. We just wanted to start off with something fun. So that was our favorite sitcom theme songs for today. Now we're going to jump right into the topic. Today's topic is, and we kind of started it in our last podcast, and we said, let's bring that back. So it's, when is the best time in a relationship to start having sex? So who would like to jump into this and just let's go there? When is the best time in a relationship to start having sex? Or maybe you can share your perspective. Maybe you can share what others think, or when you started having sex, did that work for you? Let's go. Let's not be shy.
Well, I could kick it off.
Thank you.
I started having sex way too early. Too early to even mention on this podcast, okay? Because I'm shamed.
Don't be ashamed.
Because I'm shamed.
Don't
But
be shamed, because there's girls out there the same age, and we don't want them to feel shame. We want them to know it'll be okay.
okay. So I'm sharing. Y'all want me to share?
If you want to, you don't have to share. I'm just saying, don't be shamed.
Okay, I won't say my age, but I will say I was in middle school. Okay. And I was a willing participant, but naive, definitely taken advantage of. And I think that, I think back now, and of course, I know that I was not ready and I should have waited, probably till way after college, but that's not my story. So that's kind of like my story into, my first experience with sex. It was, I should have waited. I was super just messed up after that experience. I know I had self-esteem and, self-image issues prior to that. And then I feel like after that, it was 10 times worse. Right? Because I went into the situation just immature, not really knowing what I was doing. So my first sexual experience was with a guy that was he was older than I was. And, every time he didn't call, every time I didn't think, when his behavior changed, I was a hot mess, to say the least. I really dealt with a lot of self-esteem issues, not thinking that I was good enough, always thinking that there was something wrong with me after that experience. If he didn't call, if he didn't respond the way I thought he should respond, it was just crazy. So that's just my experience. So I don't really have a good idea right now of when I think you should start having sex, but just for me, I know that it was way too early. And I needed to be a bit more informed and a bit more in tune to who I was as a person before I decided to delve into sex.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you brought up the guy. I was gonna ask, what was the nature of the relationship?
The nature of the relationship, I met him through my cousin. So my cousin was dating his cousin, okay? And we were young, we used to talk on the phone all the time. And so our relationship was really over the phone for several, maybe like 8 months. And then when we finally got together in person, we had sex. Because, we had been, as young children and doing what children do, we had been talking about it over the phone, hormones are raging. And when we got together, it was, we had sex. Now, it wasn't a forcible sex, but it was definitely some mind manipulation, right? So him convincing me that I was ready, even though I was a middle schooler and he was clearly into his latter years of high school. Wow. So, it was, seemed innocent on its head, but in hindsight and knowing what I know now about adolescence, it was absolutely manipulation.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Tiffany, and being so real and so honest about your experience. Would anybody else like to jump in right now?
And I feel like I've had the opposite experience because I haven't. had sex. So
Say what
I
good. I'm so proud of you.
So proud of you, Cass.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I think for
I just
me,
wait before you go any further. I just want you to know that, you know, that's inspirational. So don't take that lightly. That's not an easy thing to do. And we're not trying to put you on a pedestal or say you're better than anybody, but at the same time, it takes a lot of self-control and whatever else you're exercising to, stick to your goal. So, and you just inspired some other young ladies out there. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
thank you.
Mhm.
So yeah, I haven't had sex, and I think growing up, that wasn't a challenge for me because I was like going to school with people that I want a lot of like young black men, and that's really the only thing I was attracted to. So like, not it was one of those things kind of like out of sight, out of mind, and then like I was just really focused in school and that kind of thing. But then I also like grew up in my church, and so it was a religious thing for me too, to wait for marriage, to have sex. And so it's like, but based on what Tiffany was saying, it sounds like sex really just amplifies whatever is already existing, whether it be good or bad. And so in her situation, it amplified some of her insecurities, or I mean, I've heard stories from friends, in college, and it amplifies like feelings, connections, all of that. And I think part of my like motivation for waiting for marriage is the hope that it'll amplify like that relationship in the marriage. So
Ooh.
I think for me, even I mean, I'm not gonna like say that everyone should wait to have sex for marriage. It's really up to you. This is just my decision. But I guess um, the best time I would think would be after you've like kind of matured and learned about yourself, and once you realize like what sex really means. Like, when we're kids, like we don't know what that means. Like our brains legitimately just cannot conceptualize that kind of thing. And you can't conceptualize like long-term effects of decisions that you've made. But when you're older, you can, decipher those things and figure that out. And I guess when you're ready for whatever is already there to be amplified, I guess that's when you should be doing that.
I
Yes,
agree.
that's such a good point about amplification. Go ahead, Sydney. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, I agree with Kes. I share the same values as her, waiting for marriage. Although I didn't wait until marriage. I lost my virginity sophomore year of college, and I mean it was a mutual agreement, but it was someone that like wasn't my boyfriend. We hadn't been talking very long, and I feel like I didn't really think it through, and so like once it happened, it was kind of like I didn't realize all the things that come with sex. Like they talk about it in the Bible of just of waiting, and now like I understand like there's so many complications and things to think about, like going into like having sex, like having soul ties. That's the thing. Um, Thinking of like when you're in a relationship and um, like thinking of someone else's past partners, and like it's a lot of different things. And I wish I would have waited, honestly. Like I still have respect for the guy. Like we don't have any hard feelings, but I was like, if I could rewind time, I would have waited for sure, because it wasn't the ideal like first time. Like people always talk about like having their first time is gonna be something super special, and I'm not gonna go into it, but like I just know like I wanted to be with someone like who like I'm married to, and that I'm gonna like spend the rest of my life with, you know? And so, I mean, as of now, I'm celibate. So that's the journey that I'm on now. And yeah.
I love that, Sid. I love that you could make the decision to then change, because I think that um, a lot of times the different pressures, this world that we live in, would make us believe as women that once you've had sex, well, now you're no longer a virgin. So you can't ever go back. Like you can't ever make a different decision about what you want to do for your future as it relates to your own body and your own sexual relations. Come on. Obviously that's a lie. And so for me, I started having sex way too early also. I joined Tiffany in the too early group. I was in junior high school the first time that I had sex, but it was such a like raggedy experience that I was like, that was whack. Like that's what, like that's what I need to be, staying away from. And because my, parents had always kind of told me like, you don't want to have sex because you can get pregnant. It's all these different risks. And the school will show you, the different pictures of STDs and all that stuff. I was like, I'm not about to be risking all of that for that whack, terrible situation. Now, fast forward, I don't know how many years since then, inside of a marriage, in a loving relationship where I know that my husband wants me to be just as happy, just as excited, just as pleased as he is, if not more. It is like the most glorious experience. And so it's such a difference in having sex with someone, whether you're young and inexperienced and just don't know what you're doing, don't even know the anatomy of the body well enough to even explain what you want, right? To being in a marriage where you can openly talk about, you know what, like, no, like certain days I don't want my nipples grabbed onto. Don't touch my nipples today. Like that's cool, Or like, hey, don't be all in my vajayjay with dry hands. Okay, like get it. Let's make this come together a little bit better than this. Like let's set it up, right? Let's do something different. Like, but if you can't have that kind of conversation, that's a real big indicator at any level, whether you are married, dating, just met, that you probably shouldn't be having sex. Because I talk to people all the time. They're like, yeah, I'm about to like, do this. We about to take it to the next level. And then I say, okay, well, have you talked about, what do you like, what you don't like? Oh, I can't. Oh my God, I can't talk about that. Like, why would we? That's so weird to talk about that. If it's weird to talk about it, it's gonna be real raggedy when you having it. When you
You know
having
what's
something you
crazy?
can't discuss, it's gonna be raggedy. That's not gonna be good.
Mhm.
So I think when I think about that question, I agree that I think it has to be a decision that you make individually and personally, depending on a whole lot of factors. But the top of the list for me is, now that I have this comparison, I have these drastic experiences that are so different, and one being so great and one being so terrible. And just understanding that when you're in a place where someone tells you that's the one thing you just don't know, don't do that. See that one thing right there? Don't touch that. Right? Like out of all of the fruit, what did Eve go get? The forbidden one. Like out of all the things, right? So when I just go back to thinking about even that concept, the way that we talk about sex to kids, and just it's all this like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. It's the one thing, just don't do that, right? And I feel like there's a reframing that needs to happen around it. Thais, from what I've heard of you, I think you do a great job of that, with how you talk about sex, and how you just are so open about it. It shouldn't be a taboo topic, is my point. So that's what I feel about it.
That's awesome. That's good. I mean, you had a lot of nuggets up in there, Sierra. So thank you for that. I want to go back to what Kes said about amplifying whatever is already there. When you have sex with either your partner, your boyfriend, your husband, whatever you're feeling or whatever space you're in emotionally or maturity wise, is what sex will amplify. And I know when I was young and I was having sex, I was looking for love. Oh my gosh, I felt so loveless. And so every time I had sex, it was so that I would feel loved. But every time I did it, I would feel even less loved. Like it just made my tank of love just go lower and lower. And I don't know why I mean, at one point I woke up and realized, oh, this is not helping me. This is hurting me. This is making my love, you know, more and more deficit, if that's the right way to put it, or more and more diminished. I didn't realize that, but it was like, and so having sex, wanting to feel love, feeling less love. And for me in a relationship, I guess the best time to start having sex is, in a committed relationship, in a loving relationship where like Kes said, where things already are good and you make it better. But as a believer, I want to put that on top of the list. I believe in God. I believe in the Bible. I'm a Christian. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily religious, but because of my love for Christ, that has topped off all other things. And so it has always been that I want to save myself for marriage, right? But because I believe because I'm thinking back, I was molested as a young girl. And I saw some things between my parents and my older siblings that told me I wasn't enough, or told me I was dirty, or told me I was um, damaged goods. That goal or that dream of wanting to save myself for marriage became just a distant thought, so to speak. And so I just wanted to feel loved. And so every time I had sex, I was feeling worse and worse about myself. And so I found myself having, a list of partners or a list of people I had sex with, and it was never the right time. Of course, yes, we weren't married, which would have been the best time. But even in the relationships that were, or I thought it was committed, or I thought there was love there, it still wasn't the best time. And I don't even know if I'm making sense right now, so I'm gonna stop. But
No, you making sense.
it was making sense. Okay. So yeah, sometimes I think though, moving past my experience, I think that we have sex not out of love, but out of duty, right? Has anybody ever had sex out of duty? And we know that's not the best time in a relationship to start having sex.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anybody want to share?
I just remember times feeling like I had to because, maybe somebody was, a really good guy, right? Like they were nice to me, they took me out. And I'm talking about in adulthood, not even in my adolescent or teen years, but even as an adult, as a young 20 something, dating, if I was talking to a guy for a long time and yeah, making him wait, but I was like, oh Lord, I'm gonna eventually have to give it up, right? Because he's been so nice to me. Oh my goodness. And you feel that pressure and you give in, right? And so I've definitely had that experience, which I regret, but definitely done it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to second that and say, I don't even know about saying obligation, but to make things better, like having sex in order to fix a situation. So I feel like I've done that to try to mend a relationship, or like, oh, like this is gonna fix it all. Like we're gonna be bounce back after we have sex, and it's not the case. Like that's if you take sex out of a relationship, like do you have a connection? Do you have what it takes to mend it? I think that's something that like I thought about after, and like the time that I did have sex and to try to fix relationship, I just knew like that wasn't it.
Yeah. That reminds me of this quote I got out of this book, 21 Myths Young Girls Believe About Sex. I think that's what it's called. It said physical touch or sex can bring comfort and healing, or it can bring pain and regret. And so kind of like what you were saying, Sydney, you were expecting it to heal something or make something better, but if it wasn't already a relationship that was loving and, to me, favored by God, then it wasn't going to bring that about. It was going to bring about the opposite, which is pain and regret.
It makes me think about the fact that I think, and this kind of, I think, touches on what Kes mentioned about this amplification that happens when you have sex with someone and how it heightens things. And I think it's one of those things that in a relationship, when you first meet somebody you've never met before, there are things that have to be grown and cultivated, and you learn about one another as you grow in a relationship together. So when you go from whatever you call it, talking, dating, we see each other every week or two or whatever it is, you're learning some talking, whoever it is, right? You're learning some things about that person, and you're starting to grow and stretch muscles in your relational maturity that you haven't maybe used in a while, especially if you haven't been dating. Then when you decide to commit to that person and that person commits to you, you take it up a notch. When you enter sex into the equation too soon, it puts a weight on you that you're not ready to bear because you haven't grown and stretched those muscles yet. You're not even ready to be able to have the conversations that are necessary. You're not ready to have the emotional connection that's necessary to really nurture a healthy sexual relationship. Because now it's like you're swimming and you can swim just fine, but when you put weights on you and now you just drowning, you don't know why you're drowning. Well, it's because you have weights on your back and you're in the middle of the swimming pool when you could have just been swimming free, next to the friend. Now you got weights. And I think that's something that just came to my mind when we're talking about this, because we don't see it as a weight, right? We think it's going to do something great. It's going to change. It is going to change something. And it made me think about this whole friends with benefits situation that people think is a thing that I believe, this is just Sierra's personal school of thought. It don't work. Okay. It don't work. Somebody in the situation catches a feeling or wants something more than the other person wants, because when you introduce sex too soon, you're not ready to handle it. Like you just put on the big weights and you just got into the weight room. You ain't been in a weight room in a year and you didn't showed up in there and did way too much. Now you sore for the next 6 weeks and don't know why. You living.
And Sierra, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I love that analogy. I love the weight analogy. And then one that I thought you were going to say is that you stunt your growth, right? So by introducing sex too early, you stunt your growth. And so, I just love that. And I think that's a word for the young ladies. I also want to say this, that if you are in a relationship, or wait, let me rephrase that, a situationship, something that's not defined, then you probably shouldn't be having sex. That's another indicator.
You definitely shouldn't be. Yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm. I love what you said too about weight, Sierra, and it makes me think, when I came into my marriage with all of my weights, or shall I say all of my baggage, yes, I did do a lot of decluttering before I got married, but some things you don't know to declutter, you don't know that they're there until they show up in your marriage, because marriage has a way of bringing the worst and the best out of you. And I feel like when you're having sex and you're putting on those weights that you talked about, you're not only putting on his weights or her weights, depending on who you're having sex with, but all the weights of all the people they've slept with. So last time I talked about how you take two pieces of paper, you put glue on one, stick them together and smash them, right? And then when you tear them apart, that's the act of sex when you're smashing them, smash. When you tear them apart, it's not a clean tear. There's some pieces of paper and glue on this paper that belongs to this side, right? And so if you're doing that with 20 people, 30 people, you're not just putting their pieces of spirit or paper into you. You've got who they've had sex with also. So it's not just we think of it as it's just sex. No, it's a spiritual thing too. And so you have to be careful with who you're intertwining your spirit realm with. I think we don't think of ourselves as spirits, but this body that I'm in is just a shell. It's just a casing for who I am, which is in there. And when my spirit man or spirit woman is intertwining with all these other people, it's connected. And you're wondering why you have all these soul ties, wondering why you're crazy, wondering why you're not in your right mind. It's because you're not in your right mind. You've done intertwined with all these other minds and spirits. And so when I got married, trying to let go of all those bags, it took, I feel like, the first 8 years to unpack my bags. And so, yes, some people say, yeah, I had sex before I got married and I'm married and now it's fine. Well, for me, it wasn't. And a lot of people get divorced in those 8 years that it took me to unpack my bags and my husband's bags, because we both buy bags. Some people get divorced in that time because they're tired of unpacking. So you have to think on the front end, do I want to take all these bags into my marriage? Or do I want to go light? I want to go in there lightweighted.
You know what this makes me think of? Bag lady.
Come on.
Don't hurt your back.
Yes.
I love that song.
I love it.
It's a cutesy kind of like fun song, but I really get the message behind it. And also listening to all of y'all's stories, and I don't say this to like gloat or anything, but I really feel blessed in the freedom that I have in not having had sex. Like so many men I avoided, so many things, like, and just things avoided, and the time and opportunity to learn things about myself that y'all have learned in different ways. And
Yeah.
so, like when Sierra was talking about like being comfortable enough to have those conversations, I remember my mom. She's the type that has nicknames for everything. She call it a wee wee, a coochie, and this or that. Like she never says the actual words, and so that's what she taught me. Like I guess in trying to make it like playful, it didn't teach me to know like being comfortable and saying these different things. And so I remember being in college and talking to some boy I ain't had no business talking to. And he would ask me questions all the time. I wouldn't answer them because I didn't know how to articulate feelings. I didn't know how to articulate like I mean, and we weren't having sex, so like I didn't know or need to talk about like my body, what I like or dislike. Like it's the conversations were just different. And I noticed that like I just wasn't comfortable talking about things. But having not had sex, it's given me the freedom and the opportunity to get comfortable and like relax a little bit more and get better at those things. So it's just like the opposite perspective from y'all, but like I guess two different journeys to get to the same place.
That's good. Yes.
Yeah, Kes, I kind of resonate with that because I feel like just in hindsight, once again, I feel like if I had had those conversations or had, if my mom had been open to talking to me about sex, it probably would have been a, very different journey for me. I started having sex really early. I had an early teenage pregnancy when I was 16. I had another pregnancy while I was in college, and now I have a 20-year-old son. He's so handsome and smart. But had I had, I feel like an atmosphere being created where we could talk openly about sex and everything that comes along with sex, my story might have been a little different. So, which is why now, I am very candid, very open with my kids about sex. I leave that door open for them to ask me questions and not run away from it. Still expressing to them that I don't necessarily agree and condone it, but not being naive enough to, not being naive and not, just being realistic about, young kids, they probably know more than what I think they know. And so I might as well get ahead of it and make sure that I have an opportunity to influence what is happening to them as young people. And so I think that that's a lesson for, us and for the young women that are listening is to, whenever you have kids, if you can have kids, you have that conversation and be open in talking about that thing. Be better than your parents, be better than you were. And make sure you empower your kids to be able to talk intelligently about sex and their feelings and, come to you if they have questions.
I want to
Yeah.
ask for the moms and even Sydney, like how is that conversation from like what your conversation with your parents, like how that went, how is that going to be the same or different with your kids, or how has it been?
My mama
I'll
was like,
go.
I will whoop yo beep if I ever hear, catch. And so I was terrified. I was never gonna come to her.
Mm.
So that's
And
just
my
quick.
and my dad said, just keep your legs closed. That's all he said. Keep your legs closed. Keep your dress down. My mom didn't say absolutely anything. In fact, when I was molested, I went to her. She didn't say anything. When I was 14 and I first had sex, I went to her. She didn't say anything. My dad just said, well, don't let it happen again. When I was 15 and I was date raped and I went to them, they didn't say anything. They didn't say anything ever.
Ain't say
What's the
nothing.
Nothing.
That's from a skit, y'all. And so I said I wasn't gonna be like that with my children. In fact, I was like Tiffany too. I got pregnant when I was 17. I miscarried twins, and again, they didn't say anything. Um, my let's see, I had got chlamydia, and my mom took me. I think my mom took me to the doctor, got it handled, but she never said anything about it. So I said, I'm going to say everything to my children, and we're going to start early. They're going to know the terms for things. They're going to know that their body is beautiful, that sex is normal, sex is good. Sex is good, but it's good for at the right time. It's good in God's timing, right? And I know this is not necessarily a Christian podcast, but I believe Christian principles are good for everybody. We can't God created sex, right? So if we're going to talk about when to have sex, we got to talk about it in terms of what God said, because otherwise we're using it outside of its how it's supposed to be used. But if God said reserve sex for marriage, we can't expect to do it our way and expect God's blessings, right? The only way it's going to turn out right is if we do it his way. And that doesn't mean it won't be a process to becoming right, but it'll be good, right? And so I did it my way, and I got pregnant. I got an STD. I got hurt over and over again. But when I started doing it God's way, is when the blessings came. It was when the goodness came out of it. And so that is what I teach my children, that sex is good, but it's reserved for you and your boo. And if you having sex before you marry, trust me, that's adultery as well. You're cheating on your husband or you're cheating on your wife because you're going into marriage and with that. And I'm going on a whole nother tangent because I will start preaching.
That's another
This-
podcast.
Well, that's what, like, maybe that's the next topic. Yeah, I mean, I luckily, prayerfully, I have some time. My baby is 10 months old, so I have a little time. But you know, realistically, for me, I think about, and I think my parents did an amazing job of saying, "Hey, this is something you want to stay away from because this is what can happen." But I think where I want to do better at is explaining even more than that, because I think my mom tells me this all the time. You know your kid. You know your kid. I can already see the determination, the leadership, the fight that's in my kid already. When she wants to get to mommy's phone, she's gonna get to mommy's phone. When she wants to figure out how to get the toy, she's gonna figure it out. And I love that quality that I can already see in her. At the same time, I know that it's gonna be more than, oh, don't do that because I said so, right? Don't do that because I'm telling you it's wrong and you trust me because I'm your parent, right? I think that I have a responsibility. I know that I have a responsibility to teach her in a way that she's going to learn best and that she's going to receive that information. So I need to be educating myself on the anatomy, on the psychology of it, because there's a lot of hormonal, for women, hormonal, psychological, mental and emotional things that go into sex that nobody talks about. It's just don't do it because you get pregnant. That's not the only consequence of sex. Like, come on now. That's not the only consequence. It's more than that. And it's like, yes, and getting pregnant is nothing short of a miracle. It's a blessing. But also, like, a car is a blessing, but not to a 10-year-old because they can't drive it. So all that to say, I want to
Come on.
I just want to teach. I want to be an educator, not just in my profession, but I want to be an educator to all those around me, to myself. If I will Yelp a restaurant that I haven't gone to, then I owe it to my daughter to learn about something that I don't know about so that I can teach her.
You always got a good analogy.
You better come on.
Always.
Oh my gosh. Are we inviting Sister Sierra back?
Not sister.
Honey, the Reverend Doctor.
Look, you know, I will come back here as much as y'all invite me. So don't play. I'll be back. So look, I'll be back. And on that note, can we move to the challenge? Is that okay?
Sure is.
Well, sure, we can, or we can, yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, I just feel like we've given out lots of these nuggets, right? So Kes talked about this amplification that happens, right? Tiffany and I shared about our early experiences compared to our latter experiences and our lessons, right? Thais shared about her experiences growing up, not able to talk about it, not able to share. And then, you know, and Sydney also sharing about, you know, just this conviction that she felt to change a course. So I think ultimately the challenge here is, one, don't feel like you don't have a choice in this. You always have an option. You have a choice to choose to do something different moving forward in your life. That as it relates to sex and as it relates to anything. So the challenge that I thought about here was thinking about, one, what is your desire for your sexual relationship? What kind of sex do you want to have? Because I'm gonna tell you, if you want movie sex, you need to be married, okay? And you need to know it ain't always gonna be movie sex, because that's something that is scripted, it's planned and it's put together in that way to look like something that may not be the case. So think about that. Just be thoughtful. I think the challenge is be thoughtful and intentional about what you want, so that when you go into having actions that you know whether that's going to get you the end goal or whether or not that might be resulting in something that's not actually what you want after all. So, what is it that you want for your sexual relationship? Why? And let's get you a plan together to make that happen.
Oh, that's good, Cece. Well, I'm gonna move us on to our highlight. So we want to spotlight one of our FLI students, Miss Victoria Tillman. She spoke at our last interest group this past Monday, and we were talking about the comparison trap, how we can compare ourselves to other people. And let me tell you, she gave us a word, y'all, a word. And I just want to share with y'all one of the quotes that she said and let y'all take this away with you. And if you wanted to hear more about this, if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, you can email us at fly@utexas.edu and we can get you put on there because we have the link to that whole video. But the quote I wanted to share with you is, when two lights are next to each other, one doesn't dim the other. The light only gets brighter. So don't get stuck comparing your light to hers. Both lights can shine.
I love that.
Victoria.
Thank you, Victoria.
That's
So
really good. Just
So good.
so many great things from this podcast. Like this was it. Sierra came with the analogies like she always does.
I mean, oh, yes.
Beautiful.
This has been really dope. Sucks, but we have to go. That's all we have for today. But if you have thoughts, comments, concerns, questions you want to share or ask us, please hit us up wherever you can find us, on Instagram, on Facebook, Twitter, all of the etc. But more specifically, we will definitely check the email at FLI@utexas.edu. So don't forget Sierra's challenge. Think about what you're doing. Have a plan. Come prepared. And with that, ready, set, go get it.